The morning after the storm, Quint Street smelled like splintered cedar and drowned rose petals. Lila Ferris hurried along the debris-strewn sidewalk, clutching the salvaged cash box from her boutique Wild Green. For 5 years, her shop had been the neighborhood's oasis of uncluttered glass vases and sculptural succulents, each stem aligned with the precision of calligraphy. Her motto, "Let the negative space breathe," was stenciled over the window, or had been, until last night's gale flung a broken limb through the lettering and shattered it. When she reached the storefront, her stomach dipped. The entire left wall bowed inward. The roofline sagged like a wet hat. Firefighters had taped bright orange notices across the door. "Unsafe to enter." She wasn't alone on the sidewalk. Augustin Reyes, proprietor of Flores de la Vida, leaned on his broom a few steps away, surveying the wreckage of his own domain. If Wild Green was a minimalist poem, Flores de la Vida was a carnival. Cascades of bougainvillea, marigold garlands, and dangling ribbons of fragrant herbs. Augustin built enormous arrangements that tumbled over themselves in joyful excess, color crashing into color. Lila considered his style undisciplined theater. He considered hers sterile homework. Their rivalry had simmered for years, kept polite only by mutual need to avoid bad press. Now both their shops were uninhabitable. "Insurance says at least 6 weeks before reconstruction," Augustin said, pushing damp curls from his forehead. "Mine says 8, Lila replied, attempting briskness. A gust of wind rattled the police tape. She and Augustin regarded each other, unwilling partners in identical disasters. Across the street, an elderly couple emerged from the only building on the block left mostly intact, an old apothecary whose owner had long ago converted the ground floor into a novelty goods bazaar. A faded for rent banner draped its window. Lila lifted her chin. "I've already emailed a request, short-term lease." "Then I'll email a request too," Augustin said with a half-smile not entirely pleasant. By dusk, the building's landlord, a practical woman named Mrs. Gallo, telephoned each florist and offered a simple bargain: share the 90-square-meter storefront for 2 months and split the rent, or surrender it to a pop-up sneaker company brimming with ready cash. Neither florist loved the idea. Both loved the thought of a sneaker company siphoning away their clientele even less. They signed. Day 1, inside the provisional space, was an exercise in territorial absurdity. Lila taped a clean dividing line of painter's tape straight down the center floorboards. On her half, she placed white marble plinths at measured intervals, each bearing a single architectural bundle: 2 anthurium, a stalk of Thai ginger, a twist of silver eucalyptus. Augustine rolled in wrought iron shelving and draped it with Spanish moss. Buckets foamed with dahlias, sunflowers, and sweet peas. The air became a duel of fragrances. Customers trickled in, curious, and left confused. Some wanted Lila's cool serenity, but were distracted by Augustine's pageantry swelling in their peripheral vision. Others sought Augustine's riotous joy, only to get nudged by Lila's restrained elegance. Sales limped. The painter's tape became a symbolic fracture customers tiptoed around, unsure whether stepping over would incur a surcharge. On the 4th evening, Mrs. Gallo arrived for inspection. She walked the floor, silent, then turned. "This will not do," she said. "Your feud is costing you both. It's also costing me. Fix it, or the sneaker people move in Monday." After she left, Augustine collapsed onto a stool. "We're doomed." Lila was too tired to muster sarcasm. Rain hammered the windows, echoing last week's storm. She looked at her inventory lists, at the unpaid invoices. Once competition with Augustin had felt invigorating. Now it felt childish. "I have an idea," she said quietly. "A truce, no painter's tape, We combine displays, see what happens. His eyebrows rose. Your ghost orchids and my gerbera daisies side by side? That's design blasphemy. Maybe. She drew a breath. Or maybe fusion cells. Augustin drummed fingers on his knee, calculating. 1 week. We test. After that, if Mrs. Gallow's unhappy, we part ways. No hard feelings. Deal, Lila said, surprised at the shimmer of relief she felt uttering it. They worked past midnight, dismantling boundaries. It was awkward choreography. Lila meticulously snipped leaves. Augustine flung vines with painterly abandon. Yet somewhere between her precision and his exuberance, bouquets emerged that neither would have conceived alone. A lattice of pale amaryllis cradling plumes of indigo delphinium, feverfew tumbling through spiraled kangaroo paw, King Protea wearing a collar of neon calendula. They tagged the experiment Unity Arrangements and priced them moderately, unsure of market reception. The next morning, a line formed before they even flipped the sign to open. First through the door was a trembling teenage boy clutching a cracked phone. He explained, cheeks flaming, that he had posted an ill-advised joke about his girlfriend's family. She blocked him everywhere. He had tried flowers before, generic grocery carnations, but they only made her angrier. He'd heard rumors on social media that this shop sold special bouquets that fix things. The rumor was news to both florists, but they offered him the freshest Unity arrangement. Ivory ranunculus nested against reckless bursts of magenta gomphrena. 3 hours later, the boy returned, girlfriend in tow. She was wiping mascara streaks but smiling. They purchased a second bouquet for her mother. Word traveled at algorithmic speed. By afternoon, a divorced accountant hoping to apologize to his adult daughter left with an armful of copper beech branches braided through lavender roses. An estranged pair of sisters ordered a custom centerpiece for Friday Sabbath dinner. They stood outside afterward, whispering, then hugged for the first time in 2 years. Customer after customer departed with flowers and returned with teary gratitude. By closing time, the shop had sold out of every Unity arrangement. Lila and Augustine stared at the empty buckets as though miracles should leave physical residue. This can't just be aesthetics, Augustine whispered. Something's happening. Lila, who believed in clean lines, balanced soil pH, and the comforting logic of horticultural science, nevertheless felt a strange warmth behind her sternum. Coincidence, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. They replenished stock before dawn. Augustine visited the wholesale market. Lila raided her personal greenhouse and, at impulsive last minute, added rare night-blooming Sirius buds. Throughout the week, demand ballooned. Local bloggers coined hashtags. Influencers filmed reconciliation unboxings. The Unity arrangements were credited with mending quarrels between business partners, college roommates, feuding neighbors. A pair of rival city council candidates posed with matching bouquets and issued a joint statement on district beautification. With each success, Lila and Augustine's own hostility shed layers like an onion. They swapped care tips. He taught her how adding ginkgo leaves could soften rigid compositions. She showed him how negative space could heighten dramatic color. One evening, she caught him testing vase shapes by photographing shadows against the wall, a trick she'd invented, and instead of accusing him of theft, she felt pride. Still, neither spoke of the question blooming silently between them. Why did the flowers seem to work? Late Thursday, after the final customer disappeared into a ride-share bound for the train station, Lila locked the door and turned to Augustine. "We need to replicate under controlled conditions," she said, half joking. "A randomized trial." "Scientific flowers," he murmured. "All right, Dr. Ferris, what's our hypothesis?" "That it's not the flowers themselves, but the intention with which they're arranged. Two rivals cooperating equals some peculiar emotional resonance. He smiled. Then we must replicate rivalry. His smile faded. We don't actually want that back, do we? No, she admitted. They decided instead to measure response. They created two near-identical arrangements late that night, giving one to the pizza delivery cyclist who frequented their block, keeping the other in the shop window. The cyclist texted next morning. He'd reunited with his estranged brother during an unexpected rain delay under a bridge where they both sought shelter. Meanwhile, every passerby who paused at the window display spent conspicuous seconds longer in front of the Unity arrangement than any other bouquet, their expressions softening as though hearing distant music. Mystery deepened. Lila combed botany journals for chemical explanations. Certain flowers emitted volatile compounds known to reduce cortisol, but no single arrangement shared identical species, and their effects appeared amplified by variety, not uniformity. Augustin consulted his grandmother, a former curandera in Oaxaca. Grandmother suggested the two florists had accidentally woven corazón compartido, a shared heart, into their work. Magic, in simpler words. The following Monday, Mrs. Gallo returned. She walked the floor, counting customers, eyeing the pressed bills in the cash drawer. I suppose you can stay indefinitely, she said, lips twitching. As long as you keep paying on time and keep whatever this is going. When she left, Augustine spun Lila in an impulsive circle. She yelped but didn't protest. The shop erupted in applause from waiting patrons. That night they closed early and sat on upturned buckets amid the floral jungle, lit by the muted copper of string lights. Augustin produced a thermos of spiced hibiscus tea. I've been thinking, he said. If these bouquets heal relationships, maybe we should test the most fractured one we know. Lila sipped. Who's that? He looked into her eyes. Us. Silence filled with scent. Lemon balm, yarrow, night jasmine. Lila's pulse skipped. Their rivalry had defined her professional identity. Letting it go felt like stepping across a cliff's edge into fog. But she had already jumped without noticing, the painter's tape long discarded, her arrangements now mingling effortlessly with his. All right, she whispered. Let's make something together, just for us. They rose and moved through the room in quiet concentration. They did not speak, yet choices felt mutually understood. He selected black calla lilies, graceful, somber. She countered with feathery astilbe, pale peach to lighten the mood. They wove tendrils of jasmine for longing, tucked in sprigs of rosemary for memory, and at the center placed a single open dahlia, the shade of twilight. The bouquet seemed to shimmer, its disparate textures vibrating at one frequency. Together they set it on the counter and stepped back. A flicker, barely perceptible, rippled the air. Then nothing. They looked at each other, hearts hammering. How do we measure success? Lila asked. Augustine answered by taking her hand. Fingers interlaced like stems in a binding wrap. Warmth traveled up her arm, across her chest. The arguments, the sarcasm, the silent competitions all drifted away like pollen on breeze. She did not know whether the bouquet had stirred something mystical or simply offered permission for feelings long suppressed. In the end, cause didn't matter. She squeezed his hand back. Outside, rain had ceased. Lamplight glittered on the pavement. A couple hurried by, sharing an umbrella, pausing to admire the bouquet through the window and smiling at each other with newfound tenderness. Inside, Lila and Augustine smiled too. Business soared during the weeks that followed. They invented names: Olive Branch Bower, Phoenix Wreath, Makeup Myrtle. Corporate HR departments requested dozens for mediation sessions. One mayor ordered 200 centerpieces for a citywide reconciliation banquet. They expanded into online workshops where pairs in conflict learned cooperative arranging, videos of sworn enemies, soccer fans from rival clubs, quarreling siblings, ex-spouses, leaning across tables to set snips of willow in balanced symmetry went viral. But success bred scrutiny. News outlets demanded explanations. Skeptical columnists called the whole thing placebo wrapped in petals. One afternoon, a bespectacled reporter from the Chronicle arrived with a microlab kit, planning to test pollen samples for psychoactive compounds. Lila and Augustine obliged, curious themselves. The reporter spent hours pipetting, scribbling, then left frowning. Results published next day, nothing chemically unusual. Yet letters flooded the Chronicle from people who claimed their lives had changed for the better after receiving a unity arrangement. Theories abounded: quantum entanglement, pheromonal symphonies, collective wishful thinking. Lila bookmarked them all. But one evening, after filing receipts, she closed her laptop and regarded Augustin watering a rack of maidenhair fern. She realized she didn't need an answer. Some mysteries performed best unpinned. Of course, challenges remained. One Friday morning, the shop received an order for an anonymous delivery, a bouquet to convince a married lover to leave her husband. Lila declined. Unity, they agreed, served only honest repair. Another time, a disgruntled novelist threatened to sue, claiming the bouquet he'd purchased failed to reconcile him with his editor. Augustin refunded the money and added a complimentary bundle of chamomile for nerves. 2 weeks later, the novelist sent signed first editions in apology. Months slid gently into each other. Reconstruction on Quince Street finished, but neither florist wished to return to their solitary kingdoms. They bought the shared building from Mrs. Gallo, remodeled its upper floors into a studio and small apartment. On move-in day, they argued good-naturedly about paint colors, then resolved it in customary fashion. A collaborative bouquet: mauve sweet pea for compromise, yellow freesia for joy, silver brunia for new beginnings. That evening, as twilight pooled along the windowsills, Augustin unpacked a battered shoebox and withdrew a tiny ceramic bird painted with cobalt flowers. "My grandmother's," he said. "She gave it to me when I opened Flores de la Vida. It's meant to protect storefronts." Lila accepted the bird. "Let's put it here." She nested it amid the first Unity arrangement they had ever sold, now dried and preserved in a shadow box. The ceramic bird looked quite at home among the faded petals that had launched their accidental alchemy. She felt Augustine's hand settle on her waist. "We should thank the storm," he murmured. "We should," she agreed, leaning into him. Outside, winter was arriving. Frost silvered the gutters. Breath turned visible. Couples hurried past, wrapped in shared scarves. Children tugged parents toward holiday lights. Every passerby glanced at the shop window where luminous arrangements glowed like hearth fires. Some paused, took out phones, texted apologies, invitations, hesitant confessions. On occasion, people slipped inside simply to inhale the mingled fragrances, paying in silent gratitude rather than coin. Lila and Augustin never turned them away. A local orchestra conductor commissioned a centerpiece for opening night of a program titled Hymns of Mend. Sitting in the theater, hand resting on Augustine's knee, Lila listened to violin and cello intertwine, separate, reunite. She thought of stems crossing, of lives touching, of the curious force that thrummed when two contrary elements chose harmony over dominance. After the final ovation, the conductor approached them, eyes shining. He confessed that rehearsals had been fraught with ego clashes until the bouquet arrived, stationed on the rehearsal hall piano. Every time tempers rose, someone caught its scent, and the music recalibrated. "You two," he said, "have turned botany into diplomacy." Lila smiled, for once untroubled by enigma. "We just listen to what the flowers ask of each other," she said. Augustin added, "And then we obey." One late spring afternoon, nearly a year after the storm, they hosted a workshop for retirees at the community center. 2 participants, widow and widower, clicked while choosing stems, teasing each other about color palettes. Months later, the pair returned to the shop to announce their engagement. They asked Lila and Augustine to create the wedding flowers together, and if they were willing to officiate. Under a pergola woven with unity arrangements, Lila read vows about resilience and intergrowth. Augustin read blessings from his grandmother's tradition. The couple kissed amid drifting petals. When applause quieted, the newlyweds insisted on a photograph of all 4 of them: bride, groom, and the florists who had helped their hearts bloom in tandem. After guests departed, Lila and Augustine stood alone under the pergola. Sunlight ravened through clematis vines, casting prismatic freckles across his cheeks. Lila brushed one away, fingertips lingering. Around them, flowers they had arranged together hummed in gentle concord, as though grateful to witness the final knot tie. She took a breath. "Do you think the bouquets will still work if we're no longer rivals at all?" Augustin's laugh was soft thunder. "Perhaps they'll work better. Instead of rivalry, they can feed on love." He drew a necklace box from his jacket. Inside, a slender silver chain bearing a tiny pendant shaped like a painter's tape line twisting into an infinity symbol. Lila's throat closed. Tears blurred the world into watercolor. She nodded before he could ask. Their kiss tasted of hibiscus tea and brave footprints crossing old dividing lines. Somewhere in the fragrant tangle above, a honeybee circled, mapping fresh coordinates between blossoms, once separated by an imaginary strip of blue tape. If the bouquets drew new power from the love now blooming openly between their creators, customers never noticed difference. Apologies still found safe landing. Families still stitched fraying seams. And on nights when the shop lights dimmed and the street lay quiet, the arrangements breathed slow and steady, as if guarding the hope that anything broken could, with care and collaboration, grow whole again. Because sometimes a storm rips away the walls we hide behind. Sometimes we are forced to share a space we'd sworn to defend alone. And sometimes, amid fallen beams and shattered glass, 2 stubborn gardeners lift their heads to find that the best way to heal the world is to weave their contrasting petals into one resilient bloom, and in so doing, heal themselves.